Hey there dreamers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to show how I made this little camera based compass thing. It's a little heads up element or a heads up display here that shows which way we're facing. Currently it's using the camera, but I've also set it up so that if we wanted to, we could plug in something like a transform from a tag, and then that way instead of using the camera it's using the way that the puppet is facing. Or you can use this for a car, for example, in an open world game or whatever you want. If you're interested in learning how to build this, stick around because I'm going over it right now. Okay, so first we're going to make the thing look correct, and then we'll go ahead and figure out how to get it to tie in with the camera or our player or whatever. So just to start out with, I got a little microchip here, and then I'm going to go grab a text displayer, and I'll just put some text in there so we can see it. I'll turn off the border and the box and the fill, and I'm just going to make this white, and we'll give it a little bit of glow, and we'll pick a different font maybe. Yeah, that's fine. Alright, so I'm going to put this in the center of the screen horizontally, and we kind of want it to be up at the top. Now I'm going to, instead of using the center, I'm just going to set this custom, and I'll use the center to check, see how close we are. Okay, good enough. Alright, so this is what it's going to look like at the center of the screen, and this could be any direction, north, east, south, west, it doesn't really matter. And so what we're going to do is we want this thing, as we turn either the camera or the player, we want this to move to the right or the left depending on which way we're turning, and maybe make it smaller and a little bit of transparency. So what we'll do is we'll get out one keyframe. This will just be like a default keyframe that turns it on, otherwise it'll be off. And so what I'll do is I'll copy this just so we have a reference here, and we will set up the one that goes to the right. So this one, I'll bring it over to the right, and let's see, we'll check it again using this. So pretty close, good enough. And I will make it transparent a little bit, and I'll turn off the glow, and then I'll use the grid snap so that I can do this incrementally. I'm going to decrease it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and there we go. So that's what it would look like over to the right, and I'll again copy this over just so we can see it. Cool. Now let's do the same thing, but we're going to do it over to the left. So we'll copy this, oops, let's turn the grid off, move this over here to the left. Let's see what this looks like. On the left align, okay, so it's like behind the puzzle piece. Good enough. Yeah, good enough. Alright, and then again, turn off the brightness, make this more transparent, and 1, 2, 3, 4, decreased it 4 times. And so there we have that. Alright, and then we can get rid of these sample ones. And so what I want, let's see, let's get this out. I want this thing to be off by default, so I'm going to set these keyframes to turn it on, and then by default it'll be off. Okay, so let's, how can we move it across the screen? And the way I want to do it is using a timeline. So let's say we had this in here, and I think now I'll have to turn it off again. There we go. So let's say we had the left one there and the center one here and the right one here at the end. Just going to snap it into the grid. Alright, now I want to fade between these, but I'm going to turn off smoothing so that it actually moves smoothly. And now if we played this, we would see it comes in from the left, it gets big and bold in the middle, and then it fades out to the right, and that would repeat like that. But that's not exactly how we want it to work, but this is basically the idea for every single direction that you want to include in your compass. So I'm going to copy this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay, and gonna have to adjust these unfortunately. Okay, so there we have all of these. This one's going to be north, so we'll just put an N, and we'll do east. This will be south, and this will be west. So we have those in, and all we have to do is adjust where these keyframes are in order for them to look good. So let's start with one of the easy ones. We'll start with east here. So for east, this is what we want. We want this for all of them, but we want it to be dependent on which way either the camera is looking or the way the player is looking, the puppet. So let's set up a little bit of the logic here. So we'll start with the camera. Oops. I'll go in here and I'll grab the camera transform, and so I'll get a splitter out and I'll plug the camera transform in there, and what we want here is the orientation. So if we look at the orientation, basically what we'd want to use is the yaw, or if you were using this axis and angle, it's the rotation around the y-axis. And so let's see what that gives us when we turn the camera. So I'm going to plug this into a number displayer, and so well, it goes from 0 to 180 positively, and then it wraps around to negative 180 and comes all the way back to 0. And so what we want to do is we want to turn this into degrees and then use that so that we can get a percentage, and that's going to plug into our playhead. So if you don't know what I mean, let's check it out. So we're going to take the value in of y, and if the value is negative, let's see, if it's less than 0, meaning it's negative, then we will add 360, otherwise we'll add nothing. So we can see if we're in the negative zone, then it's going to add 360. If we're in the positive zone, then we're going to not add 360. And so let's see what that gives us. Shouldn't have deleted this. Let's just plug that back in real quick. So again, here we're at 0 or 360, and so now 360 goes down to 180, and then it goes to 90, and then back to 0, and then when it wraps around it's at 360 again. So now all we have to do is get a percentage of this, so we'll just divide by 360, and now we get a percentage. So we're at 0, and then if we go to the left, here we're 25%. If we're facing back, then we're 50%. If we're over to the right, then we're 75, and then back to 0 again. So this is what we want to use to plug into our timeline. We'll plug it straight into the playhead position. So now we can see when we look around, we're getting the playhead to move according to the camera direction. And so now we can see how we'd want this east thing to look. So this looks right when we're facing north, but then when we look here, this is basically where we want east to be, like directly in the middle, and then as we get here south, we want it to be like that. So we just have to adjust these little keyframes so that they look correct. So let's see, we want right there is where we generally want the big one. So what we do is we'll just drag this over, and then we'll just make this match. So now we can see as we look to the right, east fades in, and then when we're looking directly east, it's in the middle, and we look away towards the south, it's over here to the left. And then you can imagine south would be here as well. And then it's gone when we're not in range of it. So we'll do the same thing. Let's turn these ones off. So these ones need to be south, and again, so this is correct. This is where we want this. So we'll just adjust these two to match. And then I'm sure you can imagine this one will be here. So let's turn them all on except for north. So here we can see that east fades in, and as we look towards the south, south comes in and east is fading away, and west starts to fade in, and when we look towards the west, it's bold, and then when we look here, this is where we want north. So we want north to be bolded at the edges here, and this is why I did this one last, because it's a bit of a special case. So what we'll do is, let's see, we'll drag this over. We're going to want two copies of this bold one. So we want this here. This is the bold one, and this one will actually come over here. So that will fade in or fade out there. And let's see, which one's the bold one again? Yeah, this one. So then this one will be over at the edge, and this one will come here. There we go. So let's turn off all the solo stuff. Right, and that's how we get this little compass look. So this is obviously very simple, and this uses the camera. Let's say instead you wanted it to use a puppet and you wanted it to be based on the way the puppet's looking. It's basically the same thing. Let's go ahead and start time there. Okay, and we can do it a couple ways. There's already a few tags built in, but we'll just slap one in here. And there we go. So that's it. That's basically, we're going to be using this tags scene space transform instead of the camera one. So if we were to unplug that, we can plug this in. And let's make sure this tag, yeah, that looks good, I think. So it's backwards, and that's because, I guess, the way the tag is. So we'll drag it this way. There we go. So we start off facing south, and no matter which way the camera looks, now it's just saying which way the puppet's facing. So if we wanted the puppet to look this way, we could see east is now bolded, right? And so you could have it tied to whichever way the puppet is facing. Super simple. So I can make this remixable, and I'll post it on the Dreamiverse. One thing I'll do is, let's say if you wanted to plug in a tag here, we wouldn't want both of these to work. So if this thing is wired, we'll use this is wired. If it's wired, then it'll power the global camera settings, and it'll use that. Otherwise, it'll use whatever you plug in. So we have this transform input. You can plug something in there if you'd like. We'll just use that. And if you don't plug anything in, then it'll use the camera by default. Otherwise, it'll use anything that you plug in here. Okay, so one other thing I need to adjust here. I noticed that this doesn't quite work this way, and that's because when these are both coming in, we get something a little funky because both of these are wired. There we go. So I cleaned it up a little bit. So if it's wired, then it will delete this camera microchip. If it's not wired, it'll delete this one. So if it's wired, like I said, it gets rid of that other stuff, and this just hangs around, not that big of a deal. And if it's not wired, then it'll delete this and just use the camera settings instead. Alright, so I'll post this element here as remixable on the Dreamiverse if anyone wants to use it. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you have any requests for other tutorials, feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you're new and you want to see more Dreams videos, I have new stuff coming out all the time. Feel free to subscribe. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe, and I'll see you next time.